Mmm, fa la 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 la. Hello and welcome to another video. My name is Heather and as always I'm reading with a vengeance and I hope you are as well. If you're an OG watcher, thank you so much for coming back. If you're new to my channel, a very warm welcome to you. I'm very happy to have you all here. How's everybody's December going so far? So in the latest news in Living in a Fifth Wheel, we have lost access to our furnace. Our thermostat is on the fritz. So our furnace works fine. We just can't turn it on. So yes, woke up, it was 24 degrees outside. I'm not sure what that is in Celsius, but it is 8 degrees below freezing. Yeah, so it took a while to warm up the place. Sorry if the camera moved, I had to do some adjustments. So today I'm talking about the books that I read in the second half of November. I will link my mid-month wrap-up down below, but let's start with some stats. I did not compile them, so let me have a look-see. Hi guys, Editing Heather here. I forgot one little piece of admin that I wanted to put in this video. I did a short recently where I asked for book recommendations because of a new TBR game that I'm going to try to put together for next year. And one of the categories is going to be book recommendations from subscribers, watchers, you. So I wanted to involve you in my TBR game, in my TBR process for next year. So if you didn't see that short, I just wanted to put it out there. Give me your book recommendations. Now, please, you can be creative with it, but I would really, really like it if it's a book that would be something that I might enjoy. If you've been watching my channel, that shouldn't be too difficult to figure out. Jake is chewing on his toy. You can be creative, but try not to be too far out there. I don't want to have a bunch of DNF experiences, but something that you think that I would enjoy, that I would like to read. Please give me your recommendations, and it will be part of my TBR game. And I will, if I draw that book that you recommended, I will be giving you a shout out, and I'll be reading the book that you recommend. So please, down in the comments, give me your recommendations. Okay, apologies if the setup has changed, if the camera angle has changed, my hair has changed. I just did not have very good time management this morning. My mom wanted to FaceTime. Hi, Mom. No problem. I just didn't schedule things the way they should have been scheduled. I procrastinate in the morning like nobody's business. It takes a few minutes to get looking like this. And then my husband came home earlier than anticipated. And then I was a total biatch because how dare he come home early when I'm trying to film? Anyways, you didn't come here to listen to my first world struggles. Let's get on with the books. Where was I? Oh yes, I was going to tell you about the stats. So the stats are thus. I read a total of 11 books this month, 0 DNFs. 9 out of the 11 were women authors. Only one, though, was a person of color. I read 9 physical books. I have 9 physical books, 1 audio. That does not, the math does not work there. What did I do? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 physical books, only 1 audiobook. Now, if you've been watching my channel, you know that that's a little bit skewed. I usually listen to more audiobooks. I'll talk about why there was only 1 this month in the minute. Let's see, the ratings, of course, again, were all over the place. I didn't have any 5-star ratings. I didn't have any 1 or 2-star ratings, and I didn't have any DNFs. And just a quick recap of the books that I read in the first half of November. The Majesties, The Curious World of Calpurnia Tate, which was the second in the duology, Fairy Tale by Stephen King, Anya's Ghost, which was a graphic novel, and The Trials of Morgan Crow, which is the first in the Nevermore series by Jessica Townsend. And out of those 5, I would say, I believe The Majesties is my favorite out of those 5. But my favorite of the month is not part of those 5. So let's get started with the books that I read in the second half of November. So the first book I'll talk about is Nimona by Noelle Stevenson. This is a graphic novel that it was an impulse pull off the library shelf. I don't have it with me. I've already returned it to the library. This book, it was cute. So Nimona is this young, like, punk rock shapeshifter, and she wants to work with the town baddie, the town villain. What's his name? Lord Ballister Blackheart. Of course it is. And she wants to work with him. Ballister has this huge vendetta that he's working on, and she wants to be his sidekick. And so she does. And she helps him. They become fast friends, even though they're really, really different in personalities, but they become friends. And what I liked about this story is it had kind of a weird mix of time periods. So, Ballister is this knight, and so there's kind of the way the town is run, you're reminded of like the times of Camelot. So it's like a village with castles and really primitive people and the way they get their food and resources. But at the same time, they have like computers and technology, and the town is run by like a queen-like person, but she sits behind a desk. She's got an intercom. She's got this big screen in which she communicates with other people. So it's this weird mix, which I thought was just kind of fun. And then the way Nimona talks, she talks like a present day punk rocker teenager. And then Ballister talks like a knight from the Knights of the Round Table era. So it's kind of fun in those terms. I enjoyed this book. It's very, very dense. It's over 200 pages. The font is super, super tiny. And so there's a lot that goes on in this book. The art is somewhat basic, and then there were some illustrations that I found it was kind of muddy, so it was kind of hard to read what was going on. I mean, you kind of know within the context of the story what's going on, but the art itself just was a little messy in some places. But at its core, this is a graphic novel about found family and friendship and loyalty, and I liked that part of the story. I found it too long. When I pick up a graphic novel, I just kind of want to blaze through it. I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on it. And this was super long, and it took me longer than I expected to. But, there's dragons, there's rivalry, there's action and adventure. So if you like those types of things, you might like this story. I gave it 2.5 stars. The next book I'll talk about is The Turn of the Key by Ruth Ware. If you've been watching my videos, you know that I've had kind of an ongoing struggle with Miss Ware. The first book I read by her was In a Dark, Dark Wood, and it's been my favorite, has remained my favorite. I've read One by One. I've read The Woman in Cabin 10. I've read The Death of Mrs. Westaway. And I think the only 2 that I have left to read is The Lying Game and her most recent, The It Girl, I believe. And I'm not sure if I'm going to read them. So this one is very, very popular book. And it was okay. This follows Rowan, she applies for a job as a nanny with this well-to-do family in this house that is a smart house. So architecturally, it was built to be a smart house. It's got cameras, it's got intercoms, it has like face recognition, it has a refrigerator that tells you you're low on milk, that type of thing. And Rowan takes this job to come and be a live-in nanny, very, very well paid live-in nanny. She can't resist. So even though she goes to interview and she gets weird vibes from the children, from the fact that the father isn't there for the interview, there's actually a couple of things that go on that would normally be red flags, but because of the pay, she can't help but take this job, and she's drawn in by this beautiful house. Of course, once she gets there, all kinds of weird things start happening. The way this book is formatted, it is a letter that Rowan is writing from jail. She has been accused of killing one of the children, and she's writing a letter to a new attorney because her original attorney doesn't help her as much as she thinks that he should. So she's writing to a new attorney saying, please believe me, I didn't hurt anybody, and here's what happened. This book is written, it's very, very atmospheric. So if you like that type of thing, you will like this book. You know every last detail of the landscaping, you know every last detail of the house itself, how it's decorated, the architecture, the structure, the colors, everything. And that's a little bit too much for me. I just think that Ruth Ware spends way too much time on building a picture, more time than I think is necessary. There's another book I'm going to talk about in a couple of minutes where it's very, very clear where you are and what the atmosphere is like in just a few words. And I'll talk about that in a minute. But she spends way too much time, I think, just describing. I just don't need to know every last detail of every single piece of furniture in the house. So what kept me going in this story is that there was just a lot going on. You get a weird vibe from one of the children who says some weird stuff when Rowan first meets them. There's a caretaker, not the caretaker. Yeah, I guess he is. He's kind of an on-site handyman. His name is Jack, and Rowan meets him, and there's an instant attraction, but at the same time, there's something about him. You don't know throughout the whole book until the end whether he's friend or foe. The parents are just immediately MIA. Rowan gets hired, and then because of work or whatever, both the mom and the dad are immediately gone. They go on this business trip. And so Rowan doesn't have any opportunity really to learn the house, learn about the children, get to know the children before she is just thrown in the deep end. There is a maid, I guess you would call her, I guess a housekeeper who comes. She's not a live-in. She comes a couple of times during the week. I think she's in charge of the groceries or something like that. She's known the family a long time, and she does not like Rowan at all. So Rowan doesn't know why this woman is giving her the bad juju. And throughout the whole book, you're not sure if you're dealing with a smart house that's being controlled by somebody who's making bad things happen, or if it's a haunted house. You just don't know. There's this weird tension throughout the whole book. And I guess I think a lot of people like it because they like that weird tension throughout a whole story. But I need to know a little bit more. I'm not sure. It was a good story. There's also a backstory. Rowan, is she who she says she is? There's stuff going on there. There's history with her and something going on in her past. Of course, I don't want to spoil anything that has to do with this current job she's taken and why she took this job. So there's a lot. I mean, a lot that just comes together in the end. There's a lot of stuff that just comes to light in the end, and it's just, I don't know. It's not even a too little, too late thing. It's a lot too late. There's a lot that happens towards the last 50 pages of the book. But it's a decent story. It kept me turning the pages. It kept me intrigued. I'm not sure if I'm going to read any more of Ruth Ware's book. And as I say that, I'm looking at The Lion Game on my shelf in front of me, and I have that book. It's in my possession. I'm probably going to read it. Do I want to? I don't know. It's really, you know what? It's probably going to be one of those things where I'll give it 50 pages, and if it's not really floating my boat, it might end here with Ruth Ware. Anyways, I gave this one 3 stars. Okay, I will talk about the one and only audiobook that I listened to in the month of November, or at least the second half of November. Is this my only audiobook for this month? It is. No, that's why the math didn't work out. I forgot Calpurnia Tate was an audiobook too. You know, all my math is off, so I don't know. Anyways, the other audiobook that I listened to in the month of November is The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab. Now you're wondering, well, if you listen to it, Heather, why do you have that book? This is a library book. Got this from the library. Here's what happened. So I started listening to it. It was okay. It wasn't one of those audiobooks that I constantly wanted to listen to. That's enough. So it was slow going, and then this is the first full month where I haven't been walking dogs. I gave up all my dog walking clients. So that's when I was doing most of my audiobook listening, is when I was walking dogs. And so November I didn't have any dogs. So I just haven't listened as much, and this didn't really compel me to listen. So the first thing that happened is it was taking me forever. I get my books from Libby, and you only have 21 days to listen, which is normally way more than enough time for me to listen to an audiobook, but I was getting through this one pretty slowly. And so then it ran out and I had to turn it in. And so then I went to the library and got the physical copy. I read probably, I don't know, maybe 75 pages. And just on a whim, I decided to place another hold on the audiobook. And it said it was going to not be ready for 2 weeks. So I thought I was going to be reading this physically the whole rest of the way, because I think I still had like 200 pages to finish. But the audiobook became available the very next day, so I was able to listen to the rest of it. But I decided to keep this so that I can show you. So Addie LaRue, hugely popular on Instagram and Booktube. It was okay for me. Of course, it had that fantasy element. Most of you know this follows Addie LaRue. Obviously, she is from France. She is from the 18th century. She's born like 1700s. As a young girl, she is promised to be married to somebody she doesn't want to be married to. And in order to get it out of it, she runs into the forest. She meets with the devil. And she basically sells her soul. And she's cursed. And she's cursed to be invisible to anybody that meets her, really. I mean, she can meet people see her, but as soon as they turn their back or close a door or whatever, they forget about her. And even though only seconds can pass, if they turn back around and she's standing there, they treat her like they're meeting her for the very first time. So nobody remembers her, and she goes through life. And the devil is basically saying, just give your soul to me, end your life. Your life is going to be worthless anyways. And she's stubborn and says, no, I'll make it work. And you follow her, and it's a dual timeline. You are following her as she makes her way through life, as she makes adjustments on how to survive when nobody remembers her. Because if you think about it, she can't get a job. She can't rent a place to live. So she's constantly transient. And she learns little tricks of the trade on how to get by with clothing herself and sheltering herself and feeding herself. And those are interesting. And then the dual timeline, also, you're in present day where she's making things work. She's living in New York City now, and she goes into a bookstore and she meets the bookseller, and for some reason or another, the bookseller, Henry, remembers her. The story goes from there. I did not feel connected to Addie. I did feel connected to Henry. I really liked Henry's character. I'm not sure why. But Henry's got a little backstory of his own, which I found was interesting. I didn't know about it when I went into this book, and I think it adds definitely to the story. I just think there should have been more of it to the story. I think this is so heavily dual timeline just with Addie. I think it would have been a more compelling story for me if it was dual stories between Henry and Addie. If you went back and forth between Henry and Addie, and then their lives merging together, I would have found that a lot more compelling to read. Other than that, I felt it dragged a little bit. Very, very, very flowery writing. I mean, Schwab she really does know how to put some words together to make a really beautiful sentence. And her descriptions of things are just beautiful. Her similes and metaphors. I mean, she definitely has got skills when it comes to writing, but it's constant. I mean, it's It doesn't need to be every paragraph of every page of a pretty hefty book. I just thought that was a little excessive for my tastes. I know this is a totally unpopular opinion, but I will give V.E. Schwab another go. I am intrigued by her, what is it, Darker Shade of Magic series. I will probably give that a go. You know, millions and millions of people, can't be wrong, but this one just was meh for me. I gave this one 3 stars. The next book I read in the month of November is Taste by Stanley Tucci. This is My Life Through Food. This is a memoir by Stanley Tucci. I love Stanley Tucci. I have loved him for many, many years. I loved his character in Easy A. I loved his character in The Devil Wears Prada and so many other things. I wish that I had listened to this book. However, reading the physical copy, I could hear his voice. He's got a very distinctive voice, and I can hear his voice reading to me as I was reading this book, and I really, really enjoyed it. There's a lot of food in this book. Do not read this book while you're hungry. Oh, I also wanted to show you, unfortunately I can't show you the whole thing just because it's a library book, so the dust jacket is taped down, but you can see the end pages, maybe the back. The end pages are just gorgeous. It's like these drawings of tomatoes. Just gorgeous. Look how handsome he is. Is he not? He is a good looking dude. Anyways, I really enjoyed this. I did expect a little bit more memoir and less food. There's a lot of food talk in here, and it says it right on the cover. I get it. But I wanted more of Stanley, and I wanted more of his life. And there is some of that in here, there's just a lot of food. And he's a super funny dude. That definitely comes through. He's got a great sense of humor. He talks about a lot of about his family growing up. There's a lot of recipes in here. So if you're interested in some really yummy, I would say not simple though, Italian recipes, definitely pick this up. But the one thing that I really appreciated about this book and that I was interested to read more about, and I think was kind of the catalyst for him to put this book together, was his struggle with, he had tongue cancer. And of all the types of cancer, someone like him who his whole life has revolved around food, to get tongue cancer, what kind of joke is that? Anyways, he really wraps up the whole theme of this book of him talking about how food has influenced his life. He really goes into how he struggled with this cancer, what it was like for him, very, very detailed on how this affected his life, how it affected his eating and enjoyment of food. Was heartbreaking. I did want to share with you this little excerpt because I thought it just spoke to me. He says, "To me, eating well is not just about what tastes good, but about the connections that are made through the food itself. I'm hardly saying anything new by stating that our links to what we eat have practically disappeared beneath sheets of plastic wrap. But what are also disappearing are the wonderful, vital human connections we're able to make when we buy something we love to eat from someone who loves to sell it, who bought it from someone who loves to grow, catch, or raise it. Whether we know it or not, great comfort is found in these relationships, and they are very much a part of what solidifies a community." And with that, he was talking about how he goes to the fish market to buy his fish, or he goes to the butcher to buy his meat, or he goes to the farmer's market to buy his vegetables or anything else, and he talks to and engages with the people who bring these foods to the communities. And you know, food and the enjoyment of food is so much more than just going to the supermarket and picking up a piece of food that's wrapped in plastic and, you know, not really engaging in anybody that has to do with preparing that food. So I really appreciated that a lot. And I really enjoyed his telling of that phenomenon. He does do a lot of name dropping in here, which I thought it was fun. I mean, it brought me back to some of the movies that I've watched him in, and it has inspired me to watch Big Night, which he wrote and starred in. And did he direct it? No, I don't think he directed it, but he's in this movie. It's about the restaurant business. It's about him, or it's about 2 brothers who are in the restaurant business, and it stars him and Tony Shalhoub, who plays Monk. And I don't know why I haven't seen that movie yet, but it inspired me to Netflix it. Anyways, I gave this book 4 stars. Typically, I don't rate memoirs. For instance, I didn't rate Know My Name, just someone's story. I don't know. I didn't feel like I have any business rating a book like that at all. But I felt like I needed to rate this as far as my enjoyment of reading it. It would have gotten 5 stars for me if it wasn't so food heavy, and it's really hard to explain because you're like, well, Heather, it's called Taste My Life Through Food. Yeah, I get it, but I wanted more life and less food. What can I say? But I do recommend it if you like a good memoir, if you love Stanley Tucci like I do, if you like reading about food, you won't be disappointed. So yeah, 4 stars. Speaking of food, I was at the library the other day, and then I remembered it was my turn to come up with dinner, and I hadn't prepared, and so it just so happens I was walking by the cooking section of the library, and I pulled this one off the shelf, and it is Chowderland by Brooke Donnie. Not sure if that J is silent, but this is hearty soups and stews with sides and salads to match. I ended up making the Creole seafood gumbo, and it turned out not bad. It was my first gumbo. I don't think I stirred the roux long enough, so it was a lighter color. If you know, you know. But it was delicious. And there's tons of really lovely looking stews and soups and chowders in here. Like, if you love seafood like I do, this is the shrimp, fennel, and red potato chowder. Looks delicious. There's another one in here. This is the American bouillabaisse with garlic toast and sriracha root. I don't even know how to say that. The photographs are beautiful. They have desserts in here. They have salads, breads in here. There's, what is that? That looks like a focaccia. It is rosemary onion focaccia, which looks amazing. But this book, it's a small little book, but it's really wonderful because it tells you the history of chowder. It makes recommendations like the right pots to use, the right clams to use for different chowders, different stews, the right kind of potatoes. There are quotes in here, which I think are pretty fun. The most fun, of course, I thought there's a quote in here out of Moby Dick. It says, "Ishmael's chowder." I won't read it to you, but it's basically his experience eating chowder, which I thought was interesting. The one quote I will share with you is by someone named William Cobbett, and his quote is, "Without bread, all is misery." I feel ya, Billy. I feel ya. Anyways, it was a handy little book. I successfully made dinner when it was my turn. And yeah, I would definitely get this book again if I wanted to make another chowder. If you want to know anything about the whole New England history, well, not the whole New England history, but some, if you want like a dinner with a New England vibe and you're interested in making a chowder or a stew or just a yummy, belly-warming soup, this is a good one. I gave this one 4 stars. All right, I saved the best for last. This wasn't the last one that I read in the month of November, but I just wanted to save it for last because it turned out to be my favorite of November, and that is Blood Sugar by Sasha Rothschild. This book was so much fun. Now it says right on the cover, she's accused of 4 murders. She's only guilty of 3. So you already know she's a murderer. You just do. So this follows Ruby, and that's who they're talking about here. It takes place in Miami, Florida. And this is what I was talking about when I was talking about atmospheric writing, when I was talking about the turn of the key. So in here, she writes somewhat atmospherically too, because I got the feel that I was in South Beach. I was in Miami with bright colors and the palm trees and the bright architecture. And I got a very, very clear sense that we were in South Beach, Miami, without spending pages and pages of flowery descriptions. So I appreciated that. Back to Ruby. You follow her. She's a good person. She's one of those people that I would want to be friends with, that I would want to hang out with. Yeah, and she's a serial killer, but she's not portrayed as a psychotic. She's not portrayed as a sociopath. She's not portrayed as a crazy person of any ilk. I connected with Ruby. Don't know if I should be ashamed of myself. But you follow Ruby. She's a therapist, and you learn about the 4 murders that happen, and you you're rooting for Ruby. You just are. You just can't help yourself. All I can tell you, I don't want to spoil anything, obviously, is I read this book in 3 days, maybe more like 2.5. It was a page turner. It's so much fun. It's very compelling. The writing is so easy to get through. A couple of things that I thought were just super fun for me personally is that her and her husband adopt a boxer dog. And if you know me, you know that I love boxers. I've had 5 of them. My Zoe's a boxer. Anyways, they adopt a boxer puppy. They name her Kangaroo. Just absolutely adorable. Another thing that I really enjoyed is I really enjoyed how she compared how marriage is like getting a promotion at work. Let me see if I could find this for you. I noticed many people, women especially, thought of marriage as a goal, something to attain, like getting a promotion. But in order to get that promotion, one has to be attentive and good at the job they have. In terms of relationship, that entry-level position is dating. And if you don't concentrate on the day-to-day of getting to know someone and instead keep imagining and longing for the bigger corner office of marriage, you are not going to perform as well at the task at hand, which is to spend time with your significant other and decide if they bring out the best in you, challenge you in positive ways, but unconditionally love you and support you when you need them to have your back. Wanting to get married for the sake of the title is short-sighted and ends in getting fired. I love that analogy. So true. But this is such a fun book. I highly recommend it. There is, I think what a lot of people are talking about in the Booktube world is representation of type 1 diabetes, and that is definitely in here. So if that's something that you want to read about, even if it's not something you want to read about, this is such a fun book. It is highly suspenseful, highly engaging. Like I said, I connected with Ruby. Just so much fun. I will definitely be reading more from this author. Speaking of that, I tagged her in I did a post on Instagram regarding this book because I loved it so much. And I tagged the author and she commented on my tag, which always gives me fangirl vibes. So much fun when that happens. I highly recommend this. I gave this 4.5 stars. I gave it 5 stars on Goodreads, but yeah, I'm so stingy with my 5 stars, and I can't really put my finger on why it didn't get 5 stars, but it was pretty freaking close. 4.5 stars for this one. So that is it. Those are all the books that I read in the month of November. As you can probably tell, Blood Sugar was my favorite of the month. What was your favorite of the month? I would love to know. Please feel free to comment down in the doodly-doo, or you can just say hi. Have you read any of these books that I talked about? Please let me know. I would love to hear your thoughts on them. If you're still watching at this point, please consider giving that like button a boop, and a subscribe would be wonderful. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.